Hey there, welcome to the DFS Build NBA edition. I'm Kevin Roberts, joined with Taylor Smith on this Friday, January 17th. We're getting ready to go over the DraftKings main slate. Nice 7-gamer tonight. Should be a fun one. Yesterday was a bit of a disaster, but hey, that follows up a lot of winning that we've been doing recently. So if you are looking to win and you've not been a part of it, you can obviously watch this video, subscribe to us on YouTube to get all of our videos for free. Also smash that like button if we've already helped you before. And if you want continued assistance, you can go to our Discord, which is also free. Join the growing community, and we'll all try to help each other win. And you also get updated core plays leading into lock. And if we've already helped you, you can also consider smashing that super thanks right below the video and donate a little bit back to us if you'd like. All right, we go position by position, highlighting the top plays of the slate, talk about strategy, and try to, gear you towards a winning process as far as how you are going to build lineups and which guys you should be looking at in your lineup optimizer the most. All right, let's get to it. Starting at point guard, it's looking pretty good up top. We have SGA and LaMelo Ball with a pretty similar projection, pretty similar price. I guess if one of them were chalky, we could consider definitely fading one and going with the other just based off of ownership, but neither of them are pulling major ownership at the moment because of the presence of Giannis and Jokic. So kind of hope Jokic plays and these guys go slightly overlooked. How are you feeling about them up top?
Yeah, I mean, they look phenomenal. Of course, LaMelo against the Bulls, like one of the best matchups you can have. He's been phenomenal. He's played 39 minutes in 2 games in a row. Brandon Miller could be out. I think LaMelo, regardless of the Brandon Miller thing, is an outstanding play. Going to be really chalky, but don't care about that. I don't really think SGA is going to be super popular. He's a little bit cheaper than LaMelo. He gets a big usage boost without the centers in there for OKC. We saw him completely nuke last night in a worse matchup. There's a back-to-back with travel, but they didn't go too far, just from OKC to Dallas. So should be okay. Happy to pay up for both, and I think pairing them is a pretty interesting way to go.
Yeah, that is currently where I'm at. Not much else to say about LaMelo and SGA. You're spot on there for sure. The one interesting thing is Dame is projecting like a god here at 8.4K against the Raptors, as one would expect. So it's a really good spot. Obviously, there's Giannis there, and if Giannis is going to be super chalky, definitely a nice leverage play at only 8.4K. I find it a little bit difficult to feel great about going away from LaMelo and SGA, even with a discount, just because Giannis is still there and Chris Middleton's back. I kind of would rather just eat the Chris Middleton value and just kind of ignore Dame and Giannis. But how are you feeling about Dame tonight?
I think he's a phenomenal tournament play. He's 8-4, like he's super cheap. The Raptors are horrible defensively, big pace-up spot for Milwaukee. Giannis is going to be chalky, I think. So Dame as leverage, not only from Giannis, but from the more expensive point guards, I think is outstanding. We've seen a ceiling from him still, even with Giannis and Middleton and everybody in. So definitely someone I'm interested in playing as a differentiator. I think he's going to go under-owned.
Yeah, for sure. 8.4K is like the cheapest we've seen Dame all year, too. In that same price range, we do have Scotty Barnes with a very similar projection in that same game. There's also DeJounte Murray, who looks really good. And, of course, there's Brunson at 8.7. If Cat is out, Brunson would be even better. So all those guys look really good. I don't have an issue with any of them. And, honestly, none of them are projecting for crazy ownership. It looks like it's kind of split between those, first 6 guys in terms of projections. And I will not fight anybody who wants any of those dudes. There's nothing wrong with any of them. I still am looking at LaMelo and SGA. It just feels a little bit too obvious with their crazy projections as a direct pivot off of guys like Jokic and Giannis. And then, we can keep going down. There are still really interesting plays. If Jokic is out, Jamal Murray at 7K is probably too cheap. There's also Russell Westbrook. I think he's 7.1. So they would both look pretty darn good. If Jokic sits. I don't really want to pay for Hero with Jimmy Butler back. Don't really want to pay for Kyrie in a brutal spot at 9.3. There's just so many other good plays here. I'd rather go all the way up to Ball or SGA or live in that 8K range. As we go down here, value-wise, I got a couple of guys I'm looking at, but why don't you point out anybody in the lower mid-range or punts that you like at point guard?
I like Scotty Barnes a good amount. I think the Raptors, without quickly, the usage will kind of congregate between Barnes and RJ Barrett. Milwaukee's not a very imposing matchup. There is blowout risk, of course, with Toronto pretty much every night. But if they're going to stay in it, Barnes and Barrett are going to be heavily involved. Barnes is a guard forward, pretty useful eligibility. So I like him quite a bit. Another kind of in the Dame mold who's not going to be mega chalk, but looks pretty good. DeJounte Murray, another one. Like this Utah New Orleans game has a ton of value, mostly on the Utah side, but New Orleans is also without a few guys. Misi's out tonight, Brandon Ingram, Herb Jones. That's 3 starters down for them. So DeJounte, Zion we'll talk about. To a lesser extent, CJ is okay, but I think I'd much rather play Murray, find the extra money for him. Kobe White looks good. This Chicago Charlotte game is pretty interesting. Keontae George also with Utah down. Clarkson, Collins, Markkanen, several others. Even with Colin Sexton back, I think is a pretty good play at 6K flat. And like Murray's okay, but if Jokic is in, I don't have a ton of interest at 7K. Jamal Murray, that is.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree on DeJounte over CJ as well. I think they're both really good plays at the prices. Both prices are coming down. Really good spot. I don't really have like a hard lean or like I don't care if you either one you want to play. They both look good, but I do think DeJounte is the better play, better ceiling, better projection. Down we go. Keontae George looks really good. His projection came down a little bit from this morning, but still pretty good for 6K against the Pels. Don't have a problem with that. Don't really think he's super necessary. But he looked really good in his last game, and you were all over him on that slate. So I have no problem in this matchup going right back to him if you want to do that. If we want to keep going down here, I guess we should talk about the Timberwolves thing because Dante DiVincenzo, by the way, fuck that. Okay. Dante DiVincenzo got 55. And the next day I played him, he got 18. And the next day I didn't play him, he got 57. Like, what is that against the Warriors? By the way, the 2 games where he went off were way worse matchups. And the game where he sucked, he got it was against the Wizards. So, of course, right? Anyways, he's out. So we do have to look at cheap Mike Conley and also Nickeil Alexander-Walker. So how do you feel about Conley and Naw on this slate?
Yeah, Naw's not a point guard, but obviously his guard forward eligibility is pretty useful. Conley at 3.5, I assume, would be the starter again. He's been demoted to the bench, but DiVincenzo is the one who replaced him. So
look at this game log.
I'd imagine he could start, but it's not a lock. Like he's played like shit.
Yeah.
They demoted him because he was taking the ball out of Ant's hands. So not a sure thing. And if he's playing his usual bench role and not starting against the Knicks, I'm happy to let other people play that, and I will not play him.
Yeah, we'll touch on Naw in a little bit. I'll just say, though, right off the bat, they project pretty close and the price is close, but I prefer Naw for sure. I think Conley's in play just because Dante DiVincenzo leaves behind about 30 minutes or so and some, a decent amount of usage too. So, but he is in play. I just prefer Naw. Anybody else down low that you see that you're interested in or like any injuries that could present anything? Nothing? Okay. All right, let's keep it going then. Move it over to shooting guard. Definitely some plays there to look at. Anthony Edwards leads the way with a 47-point fantasy projection. Pretty nice projection for a 9.1K salary. Do not mind him at all against the Knicks in Madison Square Garden. Narrative alert. Speaking of narrative alert, Julius Randle returns home to the Knicks. We'll get on that in a little bit. But I don't know if we really have to go all the way up to Edwards when somebody like Trey Murphy is there with 7.8K price tag. He looks really good. I don't mind Edwards at 9.1 as like a leverage play on the more expensive studs. Just not really the slate for me to go get him. But looks like a really good GPP play if you want to go there. Not going hero with Jimmy Beck. I said that already. Jaylen Brown. Don't love the Magic matchup, but 8K for Jaylen Brown like that is too cheap. Some of these other guys we already touched on, not paying 7.5K for Sexton. Jazz just keep jerking his minutes around. Don't want to do that. Brandon Miller might be out, even if he's in at 7.7. That feels a little steep. I do like Chris Middleton at 4.9K. I'll stop there and let you catch up on any of these guys up top that you like, and then give your thoughts on Middleton.
Yeah. Shooting guard and small forward are dog shit positions today. Like,
they sure are.
A lot of bad stuff here. So
Yeah.
I think if you want to pay for Edwards and get out of there, it's fine. I think Trey Murphy is a better play, a better value.
Yep.
Gets a boost without Eve Misi and the others that are missing. But I think it's a cheap position. I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker is a great value, 3.3.
Yep.
I think Lou Dort's playable again. Shot the lights out yesterday. Not expecting that again, but he does get a usage boost without Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren. Cason Wallace, another guy, cheap Thunder guy playing minutes. Don't mind that. Jordan Hawkins, if he starts, looks pretty good. Even if he doesn't, he should have a role.
Is he 3K?
Pretty thin. He's 3.1 shooting guard only.
So that sounds pretty good.
He's happy to let it fly when he's out there. So there is upside for that. Yeah, Middleton, guard forward, 4.9 against the Raptors. I'm happy to play that. I don't think the field's really going to be there. So limited minutes, but still a good per minute guy. in spite of his advanced age. And I think Mikal Bridges is okay at 5'9", would look a lot better if Karl Anthony Towns is out. But that's pretty cheap for Bridges with his huge role he plays every night.
Yeah, I like Middleton a lot for a lot of reasons. First, he has a pretty good usage rate. Secondly, he's cheap. Also, he has a really good matchup against the Raptors here, who are 27th in 3-point makes allowed and 27th in scoring. So, like, they're just going to give up production here. And he's just a really cheap leverage off of Dame and Giannis to pair with your top-level leverages, too. So, Middleton looks really interesting. And you got the guard forward eligibility. Just a lot of reasons to like Middleton tonight. Obviously, his ankles are a bit dusty out there, but, I think he looks really good. If you want to keep going down, just want to make sure we're not missing anybody down here. Don't think I want to pay Cole Anthony 6.3K on the road against the Celtics. It's a big no for me. I don't see anything else that feels great. I mean, Davion Mitchell's been starting 3.8K. Don't really want to do that, though. I think Jordan Hawkins, if you want to go all the way down, to me, it's probably Hawkins if he starts or Nah. Like, that's what I'm doing. And then I'm going Middleton. It's most likely going to be Ant all the way up if you're going to pay up here, Trey, and then Middleton, Nah, and maybe Hawkins.
Yeah, it's not a good position at all.
No.
So we should stop talking about it.
Probably the same thing with small forward, but here we go.
Yep.
Jason Tatum does have a pretty good projection, honestly, at 9.9K against the Magic. The matchup stinks, so I don't like that. I'm not going to like the pace or the.
I think the matchup is a bit better. Like Orlando's without Suggs and Franz and Mo and Goga. Goga's like a really good rim protector. I think without him, they're a bit more vulnerable. So I think Tatum is pretty interesting at sub 10K.
Well, yeah, at this projection at no ownership, he's absolutely a nice leverage stud against all these chalky guys. So I mentioned that already in Discord when I was handing out my core plays. I also try to hand out some GPP plays. He is one of them. 54-point fantasy projection, sub 10K. The matchup is not good on paper, so people will not want to play him. So he is interesting. I definitely going to keep him in my player pool. Absolutely. You can save over $1,000. Go get Scotty Barnes, though. His projection isn't that far off. I think I probably prefer him, but he will have more ownership. There's RJ Barrett, too. He looks okay. Josh Hart, again, looks solid. Not the best matchup against the Wolves, but he's in play. And then Trey Murphy. Barrett, Hart, and Murphy all look pretty darn good. Jaylen Brown, too, at 8K. I think those guys are fine if you land on them. I think my preference of that group is probably going to be Trey Murphy just because he has good usage and the Jazz are an amazing matchup. If that game stays close, he looks really good. How do you feel about that group of guys? And is there anybody else you are highlighting at small forward?
Yeah, I like all four of them. Hart is another guy who would look a little better without Towns, but he played 49 minutes in the last game, including overtime. Like, that's just, you don't get that from anyone else really. So even at 8K, like, there's probably sticker shock, but he just triple doubles every other night, it seems, these days. Pretty safe play. I'm not really concerned about the matchup for a guy who's not a huge usage guy to begin with. So I think he's a good play. I think Barrett's underpriced. Like, he gets a pretty big ball handling boost without quickly. 7,900, good matchup against Milwaukee. I think he's a really strong tournament play that shouldn't be popular. I already talked about Scotty. Trey Murphy looks great. The guard forward for him certainly comes in handy. He's another guy who looks expensive relative to where we're used to seeing him, but the minutes have been incredible for him as well. So I think you're pretty safe with any of these guys in the 8K range, which makes it better than shooting guard by default. But there is value. Like, we talked about Dort, we talked about Alexander Walker and Middleton. I think Bryce Sensabaugh, of course, again, Utah without so many guys, not likely to play 30 minutes necessarily, but he's another guy who will get usage when he's out there. 31% usage in the last game off the bench. So
look at those last 3 games or 4 games.
Yeah, the Pelicans are a little better defensively now that they are semi-healthy, but Herb Jones being out makes it a pretty good spot still.
Yeah, I don't mind Bryce at all. He's probably going to come off the bench, but that's okay. As you can see, he gets a lot of usage. Trey Murphy, though, I know he is. We talked about this the other day too. Like, him and Hart are guys that are not very clickable because they're price tags. But when you play the entire game and you have a good usage rate, well, Trey Murphy has a good usage rate, and you just do a lot of shit out there like Hart, those guys look really, really good. So definitely in my player pool. And as it stands, Josh Hart is going to be unowned. Like you said, though, if Cat's out, I would imagine his ownership ticks up at least a little bit. And I do think I would prefer Cat to be out to feel like amazing about him at 8K, but he's certainly in play regardless. You mentioned Lou Dort already. He looks good. Nah is available here. Hawkes is out at 6.2K, out of play for me with Jimmy back. Don't want to do that. I don't see anybody else that we have to go get. Svi's minutes are going to take a hit with Sexton back in the lineup. So, yeah. And then just, I guess, keep an eye on who starts for the Pels with everything shaking up. Like Javonte Green could start if they go small or something. And then you mentioned already Jordan Hawkins, too. So that's possible. Who's the other guy? There's another guy that could start or that's been getting minutes for them. Maybe I'm just thinking of
a guard.
I can't remember who it was. Never mind. Ignore me. Okay, so on the power forward we go. Giannis leads away with a 61-point fantasy projection. He is priced appropriately. Really good matchup with the Raptors. He's projecting as chalk. I don't have a problem with paying up for Giannis, but if he's going to be chalky, I already said I just greatly prefer going LaMelo and or SGA on the slate. Obviously, there's Jokic there too, but everything there for Giannis looks great. Why don't you give your thoughts on Giannis being chalk and whether or not you like him tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I like him. The matchup is a great one. Triple-doubled against Toronto last time. Didn't take a ton of shots for whatever reason, but usually he will. Pretty safe play if you want to pay up for him. I do prefer him to Jokic on this slate for what it's worth. But I am taking a pretty hard under stance on Giannis overall. And I think it's because Shea and LaMelo project so insanely well that I'm getting to them at cheaper price points, projecting quite comparably.
Right.
But Giannis is an outstanding play as always. I'm just kind of going cheaper here. I think the mid-range is pretty stacked at power forward. We have Josh Hart we talked about, Tatum we talked about as well, Zion Williamson. I don't know why he only played 24 minutes in the last game. I found that to be quite tilting because I was kind of hoping the minutes would trickle up. But no Misi again. I think there's a chance Zion starts at center against Utah, a Utah team that does not have Walker Kessler or any semblance of rim protection. Zion should really do whatever he wants here. And at 8.6, even with the minutes cap, I think he's a fantastic play. And I'm concerned that people are going to be on him now that this news came out, but I'm hoping he'll be low owned because I'm happy to be over the field on him. A few others I like quite a bit. Jalen Williams again, just like last night, one of the OKC guys who gets a bump without the centers in there. The matchup against Dallas is okay enough. And then Miles Bridges is pretty cheap for the role he's playing. He's playing pretty significant minutes every night. That game, Chicago-Charlotte, looks good, particularly on the Charlotte side. Bridges still has upside even if Brandon Miller is in. So if Miller's out, he'll probably get steamed quite a bit, but I like him either way.
Yep, I don't have anything to add. Those guys all sound amazing. Jalen, Bridges in particular look really, really good. The Zion thing, he did have 3 fouls in his last game, so maybe just early on he had a little foul trouble, and because his minutes are limited, it just didn't work out that way. Maybe they put him in late. I don't really remember how the game shook out, but I think the fact that he had 3 fouls had something to do with that. I would not be surprised if his minutes ticked up a little bit, but he has been absolutely on fire, even in like 28 minutes. Last 2 games, 38 and 43 fantasy points, 43 fantasy points, a near triple double in 24 minutes last game, and now he gets the Jazz. Yeah, I'm really feeling inclined to play Zion. And honestly, with these other guys like Jalen Williams and Miles Bridges popping so well too, like it's, it stands to reason that is where the ownership will be at power forward, and then obviously Giannis as well. And then with the value at center and plus possibly Jokic, like I guess I think Zion's going to go overlooked, and he feels like the ultimate tourney play on this slate. I would be remiss if I did not mention Julius Randle's return to New York. I said it before, I teased it, and here we are, 7.1K for a true revenge game. I don't really feel the need to take that dive, but he is cheap. He does have decent usage, and he is facing his old team. So if you want to play him, he's there. Does not project amazingly, though. I would still prefer Miles Bridges big time in the same price range, or paying up for Jalen or Hart or Zion, but he is viable. Down low here, Bryce Sensabaugh. I think he was also small forward eligible, so we might have touched on him. You touched on Utah value in general. They look good against the Pels. He looks good. Yeah, we literally did touch on him. My bad. Naz Reid always looks good off the bench at 4.9K. Good per minute guy. Good usage. So he looks good. What do you think about the other Jazz values like Kyle Filipowski? I think he's the main one that stands out with John Collins and Lowry out. Are you interested in him too? And do you have a lean between him and Bryce?
I greatly prefer Bryce. I think Filipowski I'm debating whether to even include him in a player pool. Like the minutes for him are pretty shaky still, like low 20s every night. I know he's cheap and decent per minute, but it's not my favorite thing. I think there's enough other value that just grades out better with safer roles to where I don't think Filipowski is someone I'm super convicted by.
Yeah, I think if I can get up to Bryce, that would certainly be the preference. What about going lower? Are you still on Jonathan Isaac? He didn't really pan out the other day, but he is a good per minute guy. Like if he actually gets the minutes, there is no Goga. Maybe there's more minutes to go around. For whatever reason, the first half he played 7 minutes in this last game. So 4K against Boston. What are you thinking there?
He's playable just because, like you said, he is good per minute and they are down several bigs, but the minutes for him are always so shaky. Like he played 27 and then they've ramped him back down to 15. Like he's super fragile. He's had a ton of injuries over the years. So I'm pretty nervous about it. I just think with like Sensabaugh, Naz Reid, and other cheap stuff at small forward and shooting guard, I don't really think you need to pay all the way down for a super risk like that. But if you want to take a shot in a large field tournament, I think you can.
Okay, and lastly, before we move to center here, what about Kenrich Williams at 3K flat?
No.
Yeah, like we were talking before we got on here, OKC basically used like 4 or 5 guys in a rotation yesterday. Could have had something to do with fouls, but Jalen Williams played 13 minutes. He was good per minute. He had 14 fantasy points in 13 minutes. Maybe if he didn't get in foul trouble, that wouldn't have been a thing. But then like Brandon Carlson got 17 minutes. Jalen never came back in garbage time. So I don't know. I'm with you. I don't really trust it. And I also don't think it's super necessary. So I think that is it at power forward. All right, over to center we go. Obviously, you can use Giannis here. Nikola Jokic, if he's in, projects plenty fine. Best projection of the slate. Bam Bam is there. Don't really love targeting centers against Bam, but it's Jokic. He's matchup proof. If he's in and you want to play Jokic, I will not stop you. His price has come down from where it was at 12.5K. So Jokic is a fine play. I just think with what you said about SGA and LaMelo projecting so well, I do not think he or Giannis are necessary personally. But if you want to play them, and Jokic isn't very owned right now. If Jokic is unowned and in, I mean, that is definitely interesting for sure. There's also Cat at sub 10K now against the Wolves. I think that's a decent enough spot. Rudy Gobert is a little bit overrated. He projects really well too, and he's not going to be owned whatsoever. So Towns is an interesting GPP center as leverage off the Giannis ownership and possibly Jokic if he gets ownership. Mark Williams, my God, 6.8K projecting like a beast. So far, I have not been able to work him into my lineup tonight. But I think I'm going to try harder because he looks really good. Why don't you talk about how you feel about Jokic? You already touched on Giannis, Cat, and then also Mark Williams and whoever else up top you like tonight.
Yeah, Towns with a thumb injury that cost him the last game. I mean, I always like Towns. He's under 10K. He's been amazing this season. Revenge game against Minnesota, but kind of just a victim of the slate. Like there's so much. Center's the best position on the slate. There's a ton of opportunity cost. I'm not dying to play an injured Towns in this spot necessarily. Certainly someone you can play. Same with Jokic. Again, it's not really getting there for a reason. Mark Williams, so they traded Rich the other day, and they didn't have Moussa Diabate. His backup was in the G League. Diabate, I think, is questionable tonight. Mark Williams, who's been limited all season by injury and things like that, played 36 minutes against Utah in the last game with Walker Kessler and still smashed. Tonight they're playing Chicago, which is objectively a better matchup. The minutes, I don't know if he'll play 36 again. Maybe if Diabate's in, he plays closer to 30, but even 30 minutes of Mark Williams, who's been completely unbelievable this season, is a pretty strong play, even 6'8". Otherwise, it's kind of cheap stuff like Zion you can play here. I think Zion is most probably my favorite expensive center if you don't count Mark Williams as expensive. But otherwise, I think the value is kind of the way to go here.
Yeah, worth noting, Towns put up 72 fantasy points against the Wolves. He was very vengeful last time. True revenge. Yeah, well, not now, but it was then. You're right. So, anyways, Towns looks great, but I don't think I'm really going to get there. Mark Williams is going to be tough to fade. By the way, the Bulls, I mean, the projection, the price is another thing. It's like Josh Hart and Trey Murphy. Mark Williams is not very clickable tonight, right? 6.8 feels like steep as hell. but the projection is awesome. And by the way, the Bulls are 29th in scoring. They're 30th in points in the paint, and they are 28th in rebounding. I mean, how is that not a Mark Williams game, right? Okay, so moving on, we do have Porzingis at a good price. Not really the best projection, but 7K Porzingis, got to mention it. Gafford is okay at 5.5K, but he was 4.3 when we played him last time. He was a core play the other day, and he got like 50 fantasy points. I think you can play him, but I'm not going to play him against OKC at that price. I would much prefer Wendell Carter at 4.3 or Drew Eubanks at 4.1. My top value center is going to be Drew Eubanks based off of price and matchup. And obviously there's no JC, there's no Lowry, there's no Walker. So like they need him to play a little bit, probably more than usual. And Wendell's fine. I think he's got the more stable role compared to Eubanks, but he's got the way worse matchup and he doesn't project better. So I would say those two are certainly the punts at center. Any feel about who is going to replace Misi for the Pels, or do you think maybe they just go small here?
I think because Utah is so thin, like we've seen Eubanks probably starting for them at center, not a very imposing guy. I do think there's a pretty good chance Zion plays center to start, and they start someone else like Javonte Green or Jordan Hawkins. But there's always a chance they play it straight and just do a like for like swap with Tice or Robinson Earl in Misi's place. I think Tice at 3-1 is playable just because he's 3-1 and could see a few more minutes, but it's kind of like the Jalen Williams, Jalen with the Y situation last night, where the center is just going to kind of hang around to do nothing while the high usage guys, Zion, DeJounte, and CJ McCollum and Trey Murphy, take all the shots. So Tice, I think his path is set pretty narrow, but he's cheap. So it's okay if he starts. If he doesn't start, I am not playing him whatsoever. Wendell Carter, I do like quite a bit at 4.3. I think his price actually might have come down from the other night. Boston's tough, but he played 32 minutes. He still got there from a fantasy standpoint despite shooting 3 for 12 from the field. So a little more efficiency tonight could help him get there as well. Just cheap and a good play. Eubanks, I do prefer, though, like the matchup against the Pelicans. We talked about them being without bigs. They don't have rim protection even with BC in. And now that he's out, they have somehow even less. So Eubanks' minutes in the 2 games ago, he started without Kessler, 31 minutes, including overtime. So mid-20s tonight is a reasonable expectation. He's cheap, good per minute guy also. I think pairing Eubanks with Carter is perfectly fine tonight. I'm just kind of concerned that could be a pretty chalky build. So
yeah,
you're going to have to look to get different. And then Mark Williams, like you said, at his salary, might scare some people away, but I'm happy to play him at that price.
Yeah. Any concern for you playing Eubanks if the Pels do go small with Zion at the 5? Like, does that just run him off the floor, you think? Or maybe even get into foul trouble pretty easily?
I don't really usually play for foul trouble. Eubanks is cheap. I think he should have a role. If Eubanks is still starting, if the Pelicans go small, I'm just going to play him. I think it might be kind of galaxy braining it to think about it the other way, but still viable. And I guess you can play Jalen Williams with the Y again because he's 3.8 and likely to start with Hartenstein out. But we saw last night that there's a pretty low floor with that one.
Indeed. Hey, good per minute, though.
Yeah, he is good per minute, but like he's good per minute historically in his role, which is off the bench. Now that he's playing with Jalen Williams, the other one, and Shea, his usage isn't really going to be there. He didn't really take many shots last night, so pretty low floor. I do think another cheap one worth a shout is Brook Lopez against Toronto, like a really good matchup.
4.8K.
He's cheap. The minutes are usually pretty safe, 30 plus every night-ish. So, Lopez is another guy with a very low floor. If he's not hitting his shots, he's probably not doing anything because he's not a rebounder. But, you can take a flyer on that.
Yeah, and I think I said it, but the Raptors are 27th in 3-point makes allowed and 27th in 3-point percentage. So it's kind of a great spot for Brook as well. So obviously, I think I did say that for Dame, but obviously Brook is a perimeter center. He likes to just jack up, Splash Mountain, baby. All right, so let's wrap things up here with our flag plant of the day and our general strategy.
I think I'm going to plant the double pay up point guard build with SGA and LaMelo. Like they just look so good. And I don't really think the field's going to be playing them together, even though there is enough value to do it. And I think there's a a pretty good chance that there's more value by the time lock rolls around. But we do have guys like Kyrie who are questionable. Towns is questionable. Brandon Miller. So things can change between now and lock. But as of now, I think Melo and SGA are fantastic together.
Yeah, so I would flag plant that as well, but I don't want to double down. It's just I agree. That's probably what I'm gonna do. I think if I don't, I will go down from one of them to like Dame or Brunson or Jamal, like depending on what news pops up. I do want to play one of them though, and I'm gonna be like really just kind of non-existent as far as my exposure to Giannis and Jokic, which feels a little scary. But it's a big enough slate that I think if these guys hit, it won't really damage me. My flag plant will be Zion. I don't think he's a core play by any means at the price when he's limited, but as a tourney play, I love him. And he's just a nice, really pivot away from a lot of really good options. Like there are definitely safer plays there that we talked about. Josh Hart, Jaylen Brown, Miles Bridges. There's a lot of good guys there, and even guys you can pay up a little bit more if you want to feel safer there. But Zion against the Jazz, at probably no ownership at 8.6K, I like it a lot. And my general strategy is probably going to be something akin to that. It's going to be basically what you said. I'm probably going to be pairing those top 2 point guards with Zion, and then other lineups I'll probably pay down from Zion and one of the point guards and differentiate and kind of get in some of the chalky values that we already talked about. All right, so that is going to do it for us. Hopefully this helps you out. If it does, give this video a like because that helps us out. You can also drop a super thanks if we've been helping you out a lot lately. And in general, if you like free content, subscribe to the channel. That also helps us, and it gets you alerted to future videos just like this. There is an NFL DFS main slate for the divisional round. There's a video on that. You can catch that at the end of this video. And if you need extra help, hit the link in the video description below and come join us in Discord. It is a party in there, folks. All right, thanks for watching and good luck.